This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, business, events, and incidents are the products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Whatever happened to the Baker girl? It was a cool, wet afternoon in Middle America, where the winter was starting to fade into spring. Water still dripped on the big leaves of the trees that hung overhead. On this day, my little dog and I played in the local park, free from the confines of school and the everyday routine. We played together beneath a tree, next to the road, when a man in a badly painted gray van stopped to ask for directions. I tried to tell him what I knew, but he said he couldn't hear me from where I was because of the sound of the engine, and asked if I could come around to his side of the van so he could hear me better. With my dog's leash in hand, I made my way around the front of his old van. He acted like he was paying attention to my words as he looked around me. Then he opened his door to step out. Instead of coming out of the van to talk to me, he decided that he'd take me. He wrenched me away from my sweet dog and threw me like a rag doll into the back of his van. I never did see my dog again. He shut the door and drove away as quickly as he could without raising suspicion. I was scared, huddled in the back. I curled my knees into my chest, tucked my head into my legs, and cried in fear. I knew nobody could hear me. Even the balding man in the driver's seat ignored my cries. After he stopped on the side of a rural road, where nobody would see him, he assaulted me for the first of many times. His face was filled with unbounded rage. It was red, so red that even his ears, neck, and head were full of blood. He hated that I screamed out. I don't know what I did to make him so angry. I was afraid and wanted to get out. He lunged at me. Spanning several feet, he leapt from the door of the van to the back corner where I hid. He yanked at my ankle, pulling me closer to him. That's when he retrieved the rope from the seat next to him and tied up my wrists as I screamed out. That's when he slapped me so hard that my ears rang. I could feel the blood rushing to my ears. My stomach ached and twisted in cramps. I tried to resist, but he wouldn't get off of me. He sat on me with his fat, sweaty body until I could no longer breathe while he tied together my ankles. The brown rope was coarse. It scratched my wrists until my skin was red and sore. When he finished tying me up, he splashed a chemical on my face. At that point, I became so weak, my body grew more and more lifeless. I stopped fighting and felt the power leave my body. I contemplated my survival as I came in and out of consciousness as he drove. I thought about what I would be going home to, my mother and my father. There was also my grandma. I don't have a lot of memories of my father. He was an ordinary man. You wouldn't be able to pick him out from any other dad in a local mall on any given weekend. He worked and provided, but I didn't have a relationship with him. In fact, he barely even knew me. My mother was not the kind of mother who would read you bedtime stories or bake you cookies. She wasn't the protective type either. She was so concerned with what everybody thought about her that if she went to church, she made sure everybody saw her. There were times that she was so bored of her life that she tried to tempt married men just to see if she could seduce them, to get them to stray from their wives. But she was so homely that nobody ever took her up on her unwelcome passes. My parents leaned on my grandmother to help take care of me. Sometimes she was more of a mother to me than my own mother was. When my mom would do something nonsensical, my grandmother would just shake her head and wonder, "What's wrong with that girl?" When it came to it, when you really took a look at my family arrangement, My family was just a bunch of adults doing their own thing. They weren't working together, dreaming together, or helping each other reach and grasp for a better life. Every day was more of the same, and I knew that it would continue to be if I managed to make it out alive. No mother will ever admit to it, and, in fact, they would be offended if you even suggested the idea that my own mother did not even care if I was dead or alive. Not in a callous way, I say, but in a way where she didn't even value the preciousness of a human life. How could she, when she didn't even value her own? My dad barely even noticed me and wouldn't truly care about me until it was too late. It's funny how people take everything for granted. They just think that life just goes on forever, and everyone will be exactly where you had left them. If things had been different, I would have struggled more. I would have bitten. I would have fought harder. I would have prayed for help. I would have tried to talk to him and convince him to stop his plans to snuff out my life. The truth is, I just wanted out at this point. I didn't want to go back to the life my parents created. I just wanted it all to be over with. I urinated on myself. I couldn't contain my terror any longer. I resigned myself to die and to leave my body in the back of that rundown passenger van with that sad, disgusting man. I was fading out and barely hanging on. The thread that connected my soul to my body was threadbare, and it was time for me to cut it before he had the chance to do it for me. I took my last breath and stepped away from my body. I watched this cruel, demented stranger take me to an empty parking lot where he began to violate and desecrate my body. He didn't want me alive for what he was about to do. In his depravity, he finally had the chance to live out the horrors of his mental diet. It was a mental diet that he feasted upon for months and months. He dreamed, fantasized, and dwelled on deranged thoughts of death, molestation, subjugation, and violence. He searched and searched for his first victim. He trolled parking garages, parking lots, empty city parks, and quiet suburbs. At first, he fantasized about raping tall, beautiful blonde women, but he realized that they would be too strong for him. He knew that they'd fight back, kick at him, or worse, carry a gun. So that idea went out of the window. Eventually, he settled for little blonde girls. He waited after school, near bus stops, near family places, looking for children of neglectful parents. He figured he'd punish the parents too, after they'd find out what they had done. "Stupid sons of bitches," he'd say to himself as he admonished the thought of parents neglecting their parental duties. "That'll show them." I watched this sweaty, fat, hairy man kneel over my body. His thinning hair receded on his big, round head. His pudgy nose glistened with large beads of sweat. His body emitted a foul odor that only a person with an unhealthy diet and unbalanced hormones could emit. His clothes were dirty and he stunk. He epitomized the concept of the pathetic, deranged killer. He had no IQ. He was absorbed with false thoughts that empowered him to take every brazen step to destroy my body and wipe it off the face of the earth. Then, thinking I was still alive, he hovered over me. He placed one fat, sweaty hand on my head and the other on my neck. He then pushed down forcefully, over and over, until the muscle stretched and the vertebra gave way to break the spinal cord. It was official. My body was dead. Satisfied, he began his first act in the post-murder phase. Cannibalism. Feigning hunger, he bit the skin on my throat, chewing over and over until he pierced and bruised the flesh enough to cause my blood to start spurting. He took my coat to wipe it off him. My sticky blood covered his swollen hands. This act, however, did not satisfy him. He felt self-induced pressure to hurt my body some more. He then moved to his next act, necrophilia. He unbounded my feet, carelessly pulled down my pants and underwear, and began to violate my body. He wasn't even attracted to little girls. The smell of my urine on my clothes turned him off, but he forced himself once more to shove himself into my little body. The smell of his own body odor mixed with the smell of rotting blood and urine overwhelmed his senses. He could no longer stay hard. So he moved on to his next phase, mutilation. He unbound my lifeless hands. The muscles in my body began to harden. The color in my skin began to fade away. He threw my half-naked body over his shoulders and carried it into the darkness of night towards a thicket of native trees. He had no feeling for me or for what he had done. He wasn't sorry at all. In fact, he was glad he chose to murder and molest a child. An adult woman would have been impossible to carry. He threw my empty body on the ground like an unwanted trash bag. We went back to his truck to fetch a carving knife that he had saved for this occasion. By now, my awareness went with him, watching, detail for detail, everything about him and his thoughts. Thinking he was perfectly alone, without a soul, not even God, to judge him, he began his next act of violence. He arranged my stiffening body on the ground, cutting off the rest of my clothes. Worn out, he stood, hands on his thighs, grasping for breath. He never even once stopped to think for a moment of how I felt as I grasped for my final breaths. He didn't think how this would make my parents feel, or even how he would be able to live with himself after he lived out his heartless fantasy. He didn't care how anyone felt as a consequence of his actions. Nobody ever held him accountable. He thought he'd get away with everything, even try to pin the blame on somebody or something else. All he was good at was telling and spinning lies. He wasn't good for anything else. My corpse was white, naked, and exposed to the conditions. Spilt blood hardened on my skin. He stopped for a moment to remember how he practiced on small animals for what he was about to begin. He cut off each limb one by one. He cut off the head starting at the base of the neck. He stabbed me at the base of my abdomen, tearing apart my guts and innards, pulling the knife haphazardly up until my intestines spilled out of me. Everything I ate that day and the day before that was once digesting in my warm body was now rotting. Messily, he pulled out all of my organs with hasty cuts. He tossed them all aside like the gizzards of a turkey being prepared for Thanksgiving dinner. The smell began to overwhelm him. He was no longer thirsty for blood and violence. He was now at the point of frustration for having to finally clean up the gory mess he had made. Nobody will do it for you now, he thought to himself. Thankfully, he thought, the ground absorbed much of the mess. Only now he would have to make a hole for the earth to finally swallow up what he thought was me. With his bloody hands, he went back to his van to retrieve a shovel. The ground was still half frozen. He only had the stamina to dig a shallow grave. Foul sweat poured off his body only to be soaked up by his filthy clothes. Piece by piece, he threw each and every part of my body into the ground. It was a burial that no parent would wish for their sweet child. It wasn't even a burial that one would wish upon their own worst enemy. But it was mine. Nobody was there to grieve me, to pray for me, or to whisper goodbyes and I love yous. By now, it was the presence of my solitary soul watching the actions of a madman. No amount of time in prison could fix the mess that he made of his very own mind. No church could heal the kind of personality that could fathom and fulfill carnage of this kind. He was beyond the reach of God in a personal no man's land. The type of hell where it's just you and your vile thoughts. No intervention could reach him without him asking for God himself to save him. When he filled up my shallow grave, he turned to his jalopy. He took blood-soaked rags and methodically wiped them on the dented parts of his dented front bumper. He figured if someone wondered where he was or questioned the events surrounding the disappearance of a little girl who was seen in the vicinity of where he was at the time of her disappearance, he could lie and say that he either A, hit a deer, or B, hit the little girl. If he was convicted of hitting the little girl, it'd be for a less serious charge than murder. Practically a slap on the hand for his violent transgressions. If they bought the deer lie, then he'd get away scot-free. Either way, he wanted to be ready for anything. He took all the tools of his grisly murder and threw them away in a nearby dumpster and other small trash cans on the side of the road. Nobody would be able to tie these tools to him, he thought. In fact, nobody would be able to tie him to the little girl. As far as he was concerned with the body and the evidence out of the way, this morbid fantasy was all over. It never happened. He hunted me like a deer and mutilated me like a chicken. How do you reach someone from the dead, from this dark, isolated place you find yourself in, after you witness a murder so frightening that just telling someone about it may disturb their psyche? I stayed in this place for an indeterminable amount of time. Alone, I sat in the warm blackness that would be the womb of my consciousness. I waited and waited. I no longer thought about my mother, my father, or my family. I no longer waited for anyone to reach out to me. I felt the shape of my body grow from that of a little girl to one of a full-grown woman. My hair went from bright blonde to a plain brown. Then the darkness opened up from around me. I found myself feeling love and laughter. I could hear children's voices and the sound of a mother conversing with her child. I gravitated towards that sound, the feelings. It was as if there existed another world on the opposite side of the darkness. I realized there was a world on the other side of the wall. I listened to the voices. I felt the vibrations of the joy and optimism I had never before felt in my home as a child. I felt that whatever was on the other side of that wall not only loved the child it was with, but loved everyone and everything around it. I had to find an understanding of what that love was. I had to sit with it for a while, feeling after it, absorbing it with my mind. A mind that was, for so long, devoid of light for so long. Finally, I knew what it was. It's a force so strong, yet so light, that it could transform any obstacle into an opportunity. I stayed by that power, that light, until the darkness melted away and it parted to reveal a mother and her daughter walking together on a sunny day. What saved me was a mother's love, but not the love of a mother for her own progeny. No, the kind of love that is unconditional, infinite, omnipresent, and omniscient. The kind of love that loves all mankind, every sinner and every saint. The kind of love that we could never find on our own. The kind of love that reaches out and finds us. You ask, where was that love when a monster robbed a mother of her child? Where was that love when he defiled a defenseless child and turned her body into fertilizer? If my own mother had that kind of love, the connection I felt with that love would have saved me. It would have empowered me. It would have given me the courage of a lion. I would have fought with all my might to subdue the monster. You also have to ask yourself this important question. Why was a 9-year-old girl and her dog all alone at a park without anyone to watch her? That's the question, and that's the answer. My parents weren't there because the love that could have prevented all of this couldn't be found in them. They had personal love, love of self, love of country over the love of countrymen, the love of things and false gods. They loved their version of me, but not the real me. When they discovered that I died, it was they who became the victims. Someone took their daughter. Someone ruined their lives. They didn't pray for justice. They thirsted for revenge. Ask yourself, who is to blame for this misfortune? Was it the violent criminal with a proclivity for destruction? Was it the dad who simply assumed that someone else would watch over his daughter? Was it the self-centered mother who just simply couldn't be bothered? Was it me for deciding to give up? You must be the judge. At the center of it all, one must see the truth that a man who so lowered himself to the urges of which the most fearsome animal could never emulate, failed to hurt me, the real me, the everlasting me. The I am that stood aside and watched him hurt a child, lied to himself and others time and time again, and fooled himself into believing that he escaped having to answer for his misdeeds. He will have to answer for it all. He can't escape it. But forgiveness means that I don't have to be there when it happens. You enter into a lifetime to come to understand who you are. When you're a child, all you want to do is love and be loved. Somewhere along the line, people come along who are completely devoid of the love that composes the essence of one's very being. They've cut themselves off from it until they feel all alone, and they try to fill that sense of loneliness with everything under the sun, desperately trying to feel it, feel anything. Often, they end up feeling the feelings of the very worst kinds. As a result of the people in my life who left me unattended at the hands of a killer, I found myself in a dark place, alone. Thankfully, there is someone who lets their love flow, healing everyone they see, even those they don't see, like me. Don't worry, they'll catch my killer one day. They've prosecuted him, he served some jail time, but they've left the murder charges open so when the time is right, when the right officers are on the case, when the right investigators make the right connections, they'll throw the book at him and he'll have to answer publicly for his crimes. He may say that he doesn't remember what happened and where my corpse lies, but believe me, he knows. He remembers everything. Those thoughts and feelings still circle in the core of his being, swirling around like a putrid cesspool, sucking away his life force and weakening his mind. He may be a decrepit old man by the time he goes to jail for my murder, but he will have to face the judge and jury. But most importantly, he will have to face himself. Until then, I'm just a memory in the minds of my friends and family. I'm a chilling reminder for parents to keep their children close and to never leave their side. I'm an unsolved mystery waiting for her killer to be brought to justice. For now, I'm just a talking point, a subject people raise and quickly drop because the thought of my death is just too gruesome to bear. One day, people will have an answer to the question, whatever happened to the Baker girl?